So when it comes to a list of the things I really don't enjoy doing, it's definitely mudding and taping. So let's get started. The first thing that I did was go through the wall and make sure none of the screws were sticking out. So you just sort of run a knife over it to listen to any scraping. And if there's scraping, you just simply use a screwdriver to turn the screw in. Because of the high number of gaps in my project, I need to do what's called a prefill, which is simply coming through with like a plastery stuff to fill in those gaps before we start the taping process. So the compound it uses is actually called a setting mix, which is different from a joint compound. It hardens a lot stronger, it's much quicker dry, and there's less shrinkage. Always a good thing. So we're going to kick off that. I'll probably GoPro time-lapsey where I can. I might jump in, I might not, but we're going to kick off this project over the next couple of days in terms of putting the mud on, putting the tape on, and getting ready to prime and paint it, which I'm excited to do, but this part I'm not too excited about it, but I'm going to give it a go. All right, let's go. I used a 45-minute joint compound, which comes as a powder, and you just add water, and then you keep mixing, and mixing, and mixing. Hey, welcome back. So you can probably see behind me there is some white stuff, there's some tape, and there's some mud. I had promised to video some of it, but quite honestly, when I started mixing the mud, it's such a mess that I was hesitant just to keep interacting with the camera. I get crap all over it. So I didn't do it. I might do a little bit later just for my own peace of mind and just for a record. But I started mudding. I put on the what's called the prefill, which is getting rid of the gaps, and then the first layer of tape on both the horizontal and the vertical seams. So here's just a quick recap of what I've been doing and the mess that I've been making. The inside corner between the new drywall and the old drywall needed a decent prefill. For the actual taping mudding, I use mud that comes in a tub. You just add some water and then mix it with this cool mixer. I use paper tape throughout for the inside corners and all the seams. The first layer of mud is used to bed the tape. It looks really messy because it was. I think I got more mud on the floor than I did on the wall, which I always managed to walk in, and then I actually walked all over the carpet with it. I didn't use any tape at the top as the drywall just extended to the drop ceiling bracket. I applied mud as best I could, but I'm worried it'll crack, so I might have to use some caulk up there. Hey everybody, and welcome back. So this is day 8 of my 5-day mudding and taping process. Yes, it's taken longer than I thought, only because I wanted to be more meticulous. Sometimes if I tend to rush, it shows up in the work. So I've taken extra days. But in terms of the finish, it's actually not too bad. I usually give myself a pretty hard time, but it's so far so good, and it hasn't been as bad as I thought. Obviously, the proof is in the pudding, and when I start priming and painting it, that's when the gaps and the seams will start to show off. But essentially, I've only got to do one more sort of skim coat over the seams, but it's actually gone okay. So I'm just going to do a quick what I've been doing, focus on some of the seams. I don't mind you seeing some of the seams because they're not great, they're not perfect, but they're good enough, and I think that's okay. This is the corner. I've still got to do one side of the corner. You can see there's some bumps and bruises in there, but overall, it's not too bad. So I'm quite happy with the corners. So this is the center seam. This still has a coating to do. I still have to scrape some stuff off and then put another skim coat on. I did realize that I did put too much mud under the tape, so there is actually a bow. I think it's called sitting proud. It sort of comes out more than it should, so there is a bit of a bow, but it's okay. And I'm happy with it. I think I'm happier. I'm happy with it now because I think it looks okay. But as I said, it really comes down to how well it paints, primes and paints. And then we have what's called these butt joints. This is where two pieces of factory edge drywall butt together. There's no indentation. So this seam has to be really, really tight. And I applied really thin layers of mud. And so far, so good. And then the other thing is obviously the screw holes. I've been continuing, maybe excessively, going over the screw holes just to make sure that they're well and truly hidden. So one of the things that's really gone well is this corner, or this sort of edging. So I put in some steel corner beads and I screwed those in. And one of the challenges is 2 of these sides are the paneling. So I wasn't sure where that would go, but it's actually so far so good. I've been able to put a couple of coats on here and it is really smooth. The front part here is just delightful. It's so smooth. I mean, the nice thing is when you put the mud on, you slide the thing up and it just looks perfect. You can't help but make it perfect. So I'm really happy with that. I do have one more layer to do, which is going to take me a couple of days because you're supposed to do the verticals and then the horizontals. But that's called the final skim coat, where I just want to even out everything, get rid of the grooves, take care of the ridges, and then I'm going to be looking forward to sanding and putting a coat of primer on it. And then once you do the priming, actually the next step is to make sure it is smooth, because you can always go back and put more mud on. So that's what I'm doing next. So I'll update you at some point. All right, cheers. Oh, I forgot to mention that I put 2 coats of mud over the grooves of the existing wall paneling. I think it's going to look pretty good. And this is the wall after sanding. I had to be careful not to sand the exposed paper and just focus on the mud to remove any ridges. I used 220 grit sandpaper. I was really happy how this turned out and keeping my fingers crossed that the primer won't reveal any massive flaws in my work.